Hello and good evening. I want to thank you so much for coming to see our presentation. We've got so many stories that we'd love to tell you. We had a great trip to Guatemala, and we just so appreciate your support over the last year. You prayed with us and for us. You supported us emotionally and financially, and for that we just are so grateful. So, many people say, well, it's a missions trip, but you're only going for 10 days. What do you do? So I made a little synopsis. Let me tell you. August 10th, 17 individuals met at the airport in Vancouver for the first time. And with some fear and anxiety, but knowing that your prayers were with us, we got on that plane. You prayed us through all the connections, and about 11 hours later, we arrived in Guatemala, luggage in tow, and finally had some rest. We got our first look at Guatemala, and then some more as we traveled to Tactique. It's such a beautiful and rugged countryside, kind of like a tropical BC. Then, we joined in worship. We sang, we prayed, we hugged. We listened to testimonies of God's faithfulness. We crafted, played, hugged some more. We visited both classrooms and children in their homes, praising God for hearts healed and families made whole, crying out to God in frustration and sadness when the same was not evident. We learned about what God is doing through Impact and how we could support them. We played soccer, ate some amazing meals, visited the high place and the lowest, claiming them for God. We had some fun social times and swung machetes. We laughed until our sides ached and cried with all the emotions and hugged some more. We tried our best to buy una sandia and un libro de frijoles with our quetzales in the marketplace. We made new friendships, renewed old ones. We tried to use some Spanish, even if it came out of our mouths as Italian, French, Japanese, and whatever. So sign language and Spanglish was on full display. We joined in the church service and got to listen to Pastor Jeff as he preached, and ended our trip with a day of learning more history and seeing the sights of the beautiful city of Antigua. On August 20, our team of 17 left the Guatemala City Airport, bonded by the experience, changed by God, exhausted, with a few colds or flus in tow, but all we could talk about was, when do we get to go back and do all of this again? It was great. The trip impacted all of us differently, and I'll ask the team to share some of their highlights. But just my own personal highlight was our classroom visits. First, we visited with the classroom that our church began sponsoring 2 years ago after our trip. They're now in grade 3. They shyly introduced themselves, and they tried to do it in English, saying, "My name is." And they were actually on holidays, and so they came in just to see us, which was wonderful. Their moms brought in a snack that they shared with us, and they have an amazing teacher that supports not just the students in the classroom, but they shepherd the students and their families in that support. And we discovered that one of the students is Gary and Laura's sponsor child, which was a really fun surprise. We followed that visit with the visit to a classroom of older children, and it's the classroom where we first started, we met them and first started sponsoring them in 2016. So Mark and Lisa and Pastor Jeff and Angela and John and I and some others started sponsoring this classroom. They're now 14 and in grade 9-ish or so. They dressed up in their traditional clothes, and the teacher sat back as they greeted us. They are confident. They gave us a lesson on their staple corn and an intro into the production of coffee. 2 of them sang How Great Thou Art in Pocumchi, one of their Mayan languages. And then the class led us in a fun game. The students themselves prayed with us, and it was just so amazing to me to see these confident teenagers. And it's 99.9% the teacher, and it's God working through them as they pray and worship every day. But I thought our little part from here in Hope, BC, Canada, is the sponsorship. These kids have been able to stay in school. Now these grade 9, 10 kids are well beyond the average of about grade 3 or 4, where kids traditionally in the rural areas drop out. And they are the future. They are the future of Impact, the future of Tactique and their families. And I felt like a proud mummy, seeing all these kids. And I just think next time I go back, maybe they will be the teachers in the classroom, or the pastors in the church, or leading and working in wherever God wants them to be. But what an amazing thing. And if anyone was thinking about sponsorship and hasn't yet, let me tell you, I can help you. So I'd like to turn it now over to the rest of the team. Maddie.
Introduce yourself. No, it's being taped so that other people can see it, so we should stand up.
Hi, I'm Maddie, and while we were in Guatemala, I think one of my most favorite highlights would be worshiping with the kids. We were doing this quite a different schools, and several different times that we did that, and I think it was just really sweet how all the kids would jump up and down, and they would raise their hands and close their eyes, and they got really into the worship, and they sang at the top of their lungs, and sometimes it was so loud that you wouldn't even be able to hear the person standing next to you when they tried to talk. Yeah. It's so amazing to see how, even though they're so young, they can still wholeheartedly worship the Lord in ways that people here in North America don't even do. We are living in much more fortunate circumstances than them, which might make us think that we have more to be thankful for and should worship more enthusiastically. But in James chapter 2, verse 5, it says, "Listen, my dear brothers and sisters. Has not God chose those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised those who love him?" And I think it was really cool to see how that is currently working in Guatemala right now. And I think it's Georgia's turn.
Just in case you don't know, these are 2 of my great-granddaughters.
My name's Georgia, and one of my favorite experiences from Guatemala was visiting Impact Ministries Children's Home, which is where more of the younger kids that they had would stay there. I think the youngest was only a couple months old, and they were really cute, but it was super amazing to see how loved all of the children are, and that they're able to spend time in such a safe and caring environment where you can really see God working. And you can really see how much it means to the people who work there, and you can tell how much they care about all of the kids individually. But it was also really sad to hear about how some of the kids had ended up in the home. It was nice to be able to spend time with the kids and watch everyone else interacting with them, like playing soccer or just holding them. Yeah.
I'm old school here. She had her phone. I wanted to go on this trip initially because I had 2 sponsor children and didn't know them. I'd never met them. So their pictures, of course, came when they were little wee Gomers, and instead I found a young grade 6 boy that loved playing soccer, and a little grade 1 girl that loved wearing dresses and playing Barbies. So we visited, I might step on a few people's toes, I hope not. We visited a lot of sponsored children's homes, and we trooped along narrow roads, some hills, packed mud, chunks of uneven cement, through rows of corn, chickens, and jumping over little streams to get to their abode. And this is their neighborhood. Every home had ropes strung for clotheslines with sparkling clean clothes hung to dry. It must be such a chore just getting the water. In one of the classrooms, we were to introduce ourselves in Spanish. Me llamo Esther. And it brought a loud gasp from everybody in the room because there was a little girl there whose name was Esther. So we were able to meet afterwards and shared a hug. So I was privileged to go to the children's home while the team went to the sinkhole. You'll see pictures, I think, of that. And the home is further up from the guest house, a lovely building filled with love from 3 young ladies working there. They had very little English, if any, and I was about the same in Spanish. But love in any language, as the song goes, brings us all together. I held a delightful little girl named Anna, who talked a blue streak, but as it was in Spanish, I don't know if she was saying something or if it was just baby talk and gibberish. I fed a newborn, helped feed a little guy around a year old, and even hung up a gigantic load of washing. I couldn't even lift the basket, but this little wee girl, she sure wung it up the hill. So while feeding the newborn, I had her in my arms and she fell asleep. So I rocked back and forth. There was another little one about 8 or 9 months in the crib ahead of me. There was 4 cribs, I think, or 5, and a cot in that little room. And the little one was just kind of banging their feet, you know how they flip around and play and kick against the... And I closed my eyes and I went through all the lullabies I could think of and repeated and repeated. And then I opened my eyes and there was Anna staring at me. It just, her great big brown eyes, it was really, really special. So this trip was extremely busy, exhausting. Sorry guys, I see the Peters here. It was tough at times and taxing on this old body, but it's one of the best things I've ever done. Thank you.
Hey, my name's Jen, and I'm not as nearly as prepared as some of these people because I'm just going to say it. All right, so going on this trip has been something I've been wanting to do since they first started going, and I am just so excited that I finally got to go. Each year, it seems like there was something that just was not... This was the year. I got to just put it aside, and I got to go with this amazing group of people, so... Yay, hallelujah. It was an incredible time and you can see we're a very diverse group. We are spanning between 14 years of age to 81, and this was an incredible way for us to really feel like this is what it means to be the body of Christ. We are each individual, but we came together, and it was just amazing, so amazing. Anyway, so going on the sponsor home visits, I must say, was a little overwhelming to start with. We had a lot of them because there are a lot of people here sponsoring kids down there. When we first started going, we're a pretty big group to be going into these teeny tiny little homes. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like I don't know how I'd feel if all of a sudden this, 20 people are showing up in my tiny little house unannounced. And here they all are, and for me, I thought, oh, and we even had some conversation at the table one night, just like, okay, well, maybe what we should be doing is splitting up into smaller groups and going to these homes, and I just thought, that's got to be a better way to do it. And then, having those discussions and just, oh, well, no, actually just, that they would feel really upset. What you find out there are 17 Canadians or gringos coming and they didn't all come to my house. How come? And so then I had a different perspective when I was going into those homes. And it was really amazing, actually. They were see, these people don't know we're coming. We are completely unannounced. And their houses, even with the dirt floors, with the exception of one, their beds are made. The place is, like, everything's all just so. And their homes filled with love and not clutter. And for me, living in our North American society and everything, like, that was pretty huge. Like, there weren't a lot of pictures all over their walls. There were the memories in their minds, and it was just, yeah, it was heartwarming. It was, turtle in the kitchen sink. Why not, right? There were things that you don't see, like, typically in North American homes. But what was so amazing, there was one home that we went into, and then most of the team had kind of moved on back to the van. And then those of us in the mums group, we all kind of stayed, and because there was somebody who, was showing off their weaving, so we were going checking out the weaving. Oh, and there's a 14-day-old baby, which I swore was going to be named Bethany. But it was, and then the grandma with her hair all up in her towel, and she was all upset, and it was like, no, we're all women here. And it was just, we could just be people, and, people, children of God, and it was just incredible. Some pretty emotional times. There are people who were dealing with some huge heartache, and I must say, actually, it was one thing for us to be just coming and swooping in and leaving, but for the teachers who were coming along with us and really hearing these heartfelt anguish of what is going on in some of their homes, that's got to be hard for these teachers as well. So it really reminded me of how much we need to pray for not just the families, but for these teachers who are really trying to wrap around the kids who are coming into their schools. Because these teachers are not like those of us in Canada who are teachers. We don't go to our children's homes very often. We don't get to hear all of their stories. And these people they're there, they're wrapping these kids up in love. And it's just so important that we remember what they're doing. And so one more thing just around there being the whole bunch of us. There was one home that we went into, and Mom just really sobbed. She's like, I didn't think that anybody would come back after COVID. I thought the Canadians weren't going to come back and do these home visits. And that, to me, solidified, that was okay for us to go.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Bailey, for those of you that don't know. And I'm the 81-year-old. And before I start saying anything else, I just want to thank the whole team for how helpful they were to me with my decrepit body, trying to get places that it didn't want to go. And everybody pitched in and helped, and I really appreciate it. So I'm supposed to talk about my sponsored child, and I will in a second. But I just wanted to say, off the bat, I went on this trip because God urged me to, and I went expecting to be disappointed. Because I had been on another missions trip before with a different group that goes all over the world, and they go and do their thing in this one town and then hand it over to the local churches to follow up. And I thought, well, this one only goes to one town. What good's that going to be after all these years? Well, I'll tell you, it is good. It has a ripple effect. It started out with one church that Les and Rita didn't even plan on getting, but it fell in their lap. And now there's 11 churches, and the influence from the children back to their homes has gone throughout the communities. Anyway, I'm not supposed to be talking about that, but I wanted to put it in there. I years ago sponsored a child and then went bankrupt and couldn't pay for her anymore, and I always felt guilty about that. So I've been thinking about sponsoring a child here, but hadn't really made up my mind. And the second day that I was down there, God put it on my heart, yes, you're going to sponsor a child. And I was looking for a girl with a single mother, and there weren't very many available. And this little girl, whose name they told me was Sarai, and that's actually her second name, she prefers to be called Deborah, was one she had 3 older siblings, and her mother, the father wasn't dead or non-existent, but he was working in another country and wasn't contributing anything to the family, so the mother was basically a single mom. And the second day I was there, it was when I decided to sponsor her. And I mean, all these other people who had sponsored childs, the visits were arranged long before we went down there. And miraculously, I was able to get to see her before I left. And that was just so wonderful because I knew that physically I probably wasn't going to be able to go down on any more trips there, and to be able to actually see her and hug her was just awesome. And the love from her and from all the other children in the schools that we went to was just overwhelming. They'd all come running up and hugging you, and they didn't even know you from a piece of wood, but they still came and loved you. And the last day we were there, they did I don't know what you would call it, but started out, they were all lined up in a row on each side. And first of all, we got covered with confetti. and as we're walking down, there's palm fronds, just like when Jesus went into Jerusalem. It was just awe-inspiring. And then all along the way, different kids were holding signs saying, in my case, you are special, Sylvia. And I just couldn't believe it. And it was heartwarming, I guess is the best word, but it doesn't really describe it. So I would highly recommend anybody that's considering sponsoring a child to do it, because this little girl's mother is often trying to finish school, and she's living with her grandmother and helping her grandmother in the little corner store that she runs. And yeah, one of the other things that I meant to mention in the beginning was because they had a 30-year civil war down there, when I first got there, I was not shocked, but kind of overwhelmed with every house and business that could afford it was covered with this circular razor-sharp wire on the top. And everything from cathedrals to corner stores had armed guards standing outside. And I wasn't afraid, but I was confused. The Civil War is over. Why are they still having these armed guards? And I still don't know the answer to that question, but it's definitely a different country and a different atmosphere. And these schools that are spreading out further and further from Taktik are helping improve all that nastiness. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Teresa, and I don't think almost nobody here knows me, but I'm from your church down the street. And this was an incredible opportunity. So my daughter Maya's been part of the youth group here and serving in kids ministry and all that, and it's had a huge impact on her life. And then she talked about the Guatemala trip coming up. She talked about it a few years ago, and in the past, I'd been involved with missions, and my biggest dream was to be able to do something with my kids, and here was a chance, and I jumped on it. And so Maya and I, we were able to join. And I just have to say, I'm going to start off by saying, this was such an incredible group of people. I didn't know anybody really, just more in passing before we left, like, little bits, but didn't know anybody well. And you guys have an amazing group of people from this church, I just want to say. And they just completely welcomed me, and I felt 100% like part of this team, so thank you. This trip was amazing. It was, I'm going to focus because I didn't write anything down either. But just before we left, actually, Maya and I had a conversation one night, one of these deep God talks, and she said, do you think God can really change a person? Like, really change a person, like who they are and how they act? And I said, yeah, I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, obviously salvation is the ultimate goal, but really, like, we're serving a living God. We're serving a God who is a God of transformation. And so we got to Guatemala, and it was the second day we were there, and our guide was taking us around the town that we're in, and he wanted to take us for this walk, and we went up this hill. Oh my goodness, I thought I was gonna die. I thought it was like, and then as we're coming down, these old ladies carrying big baskets walk by me. I'm like, oh, this is shameful. But anyways, fitness goals when we get home. But no, so we get up there and we're talking, and he's sharing with us about his community, and he's from there. These are his people. This is his community, and he's talking about the schools and the impact they've had on their communities, and he's sharing. He said, and it's not just the kids. It impacts the families, and it goes on, and it's impacting our whole community. And he said, I know because I'm one of those families. And he was sharing. Now, I'm a little intimidated because Les and Rita are here, so I might get some of his story wrong. I'm just going from memory, but he was saying that his kids had been offered an opportunity to go to the schools, and initially he was like, no, I don't want my kids in there. But they're great schools, and it was a better opportunity for the kids. And his wife, it sounded like she kept, like moms do, we should, she kept kind of pushing, and eventually he said, okay, and they put the kids in the school, but. In his words, he said, I wasn't a good guy. And he said, though, his kids kept coming home from school, and they were carrying Christ with them, right? They were undergoing that transformation in their hearts, and they were carrying this home. And then one day, I guess they shared with their parents that, do you know you guys aren't going to go to heaven? I guess it took the parents aback, and so they went then and started looking into this. They talked to people, and heard the truth of the gospel, and they gave their lives to Christ. And here he is. I don't know how many years they've been serving now, but he and his wife, live part-time on site there with the organization, and fully born again. I mean, this guy, oh my word, this guy's an evangelist. Like, everywhere we went, he's like preaching, and it was awesome. But this was a total transformation that happened right in his, like, through these children, through this ministry, the kids, and then bringing it home, and this whole family saved. And I think I have to confess, I was talking at lunch today at the other church, and at Northwest Harvest, sorry. No, we were talking about it at lunch today, and I was saying, like, I think at times you get a little jaded. You know the truth, right? You know that it's a transformative gospel. You know that Christ came not just to save us for heaven, but to change us for here and now. And I think sometimes I wonder, like, does it really happen though? Because I find so often you don't see, you hear all the statistics, kids gotta get saved by the time, when they're kids, when they're little, that's why we gotta get them to VBS, get them hooked, because you'll never get them once they hit 20. Like, then it's game over, right? And I know that's not truth, but there's a piece of me, I think, that feels that way. You see it, that you don't see it happening all the time. And it was just, it just impacted me so incredibly to see this man sharing how, his children, they brought the gospel home, and their entire family was saved. And then the next day we go to this school, and And it was amazing that some of those pictures were up of the kids worshiping. And we'd heard some stories prior to going to the school that there were some really hard situations there, some really tough stories coming from that spot. And at the end, we had the time of worship with the kids and it was just amazing. And they went and played and went back to class. And then the principal, who's also a pastor of a church there, said, well, can we talk and share and pray? And so we did. And then he shared his story. And again, he was a child in that school. And he said, my parents, it wasn't a good home. It was a hard home. His dad, he said, my dad wasn't nice to my mom. He was, and again, there was gambling and drinking and all the rest that was going on. And it sounded like abuse and everything. But he went to the school and he encountered Christ. And Christ changed his life, and he brought that home, and his whole family was saved. And again, this fellow's dad also now works with the ministry. And I think I needed to hear this. I needed to see this, these transformed lives. The Christ we serve, the God we serve, is a God of transformation. And it was such an incredible blessing to see that and to see what's happening there. It's not just kids getting a good education who they now will grow up and become good Christians, but their whole families are being transformed. So thank you also for your prayer and support. I know you didn't know me, but I know people were praying, and thank you. Okay.
Well done. I'm glad to follow after Teresa because it is very exciting. It's really, really exciting to hear the transformation, to see the transformation over the years. And I mean, Jeff's always talking about transformation taking time and relationships taking time. And you see that and you hear that, those stories in Guatemala. One of my favorite things is when we get to hang out with Les and hear his stories of what God has done. And I know Rita's written a book that really tells a lot of the stories about what God has done from the very beginning there. And it is incredible. And the thing is that we serve the same God here. And God does do those amazing things here as well if we're open and we're looking and we're ready to let God transform our hearts and speak into the lives of the people in front of us. Okay, I'm supposed to be talking about the coffee plantation, but anyways, the thing is, there was a lot of hard situations and a lot of hard stories and a lot of tears, and you wonder, it's heartbreaking to hear what kids are going through and what families are going through, and the truth is, we have those stories here. They walk into our church every day. They're across the street from you. They're across town from us, and God can transform us and use that to also transform them. And I'm thankful for that. So, and the other thing is, it's so incredible to know that the transformation is happening in such a strong and impactful way that the teachers and the principals and the pastors are all people who were children in the schools and have come up, and their families are transformed, and they're transformed, and now they're pouring out, and they're giving back, and they're living that light of Jesus out to all those around them, and not just there, but all the other places that they've gone. And this ministry is really important in this town, in this community, and it needs money to run. All things need money to run. And what I love about this is the vision that I think, Les and Rita, you have had, but also many people have spoken that to you and helped you to learn that. If I recall some of the stories, people like, hey, come and sent them to a conference, I think, at one point, to help them learn more about ministry things. And so God has just provided lots of cool things to help grow them up, I think, in ministry. And how that's working out, or one of the ways that is working out, is through sustainability. And because if something happens in Canada, people get tired of giving, give to other things. they're there. They need the money in Guatemala to do the things that they're doing. And so one of the ways that they're helping to build sustainability is by having a coffee plantation, which we all know, coffee, Guatemala, and this is good, this makes sense. And it's big. It's a big coffee plantation. I don't remember all the details, but man, Les will tell you if you ask him. And so he took us for a walk up in the, what do you call it, the base? I'm calling it your base, your property, the property there of Impact Ministries, and this huge coffee plantation. And we got to be the first group to hear their coffee talk and to buy their coffee after that talk. So that was really fun, because I imagine it's been several years of having the coffee planted and waiting and caring for it and all the preparation that has to go into it. And now it was ready to harvest and process, which, if you don't know, it's a huge process to get coffee ready to grind and drink. And then roasted and in bags and ready to sell to us. So, and all of that, a lot of those proceeds then go back to sustaining the ministry. One of the cool things about this, well, there's a couple, is that they lose a lot of money in the processing because you have to pay other people to do all the steps. And so they have a vision that, man, if we could have the processing plant here, if a few businessmen, Les was telling people at one point, if we could have a few businessmen, maybe 3 or 4 that went in on this, we could build a processing plant here and then be able to, keep that money that we have to put out here. And one of the guys came back to him later and said, how come you want 3 or 4 businessmen? He said, well, it's easier if 3 or 4 people are sharing the load. And the guy said, I'm going to do that. I want to do that for you. And praise God. And so he believed in that, and he wanting to be a part of that. They have a spot for that processing plant, and so that's coming. And I'm sure there's more things with that ministry that sustainability project that need help, but also there was another guy who heard what they were doing, who's kind of a bigwig coffee advertising consultant guy. And he heard what was happening, and so he came and said, hey, I want to help you guys with this. And so he has lots of expertise and is going to help with shipping and getting the coffee where it's got to go so it can make money. So God is just providing in all of these ways, as they walk forward and trust. Okay, this is the other cool thing that I like. So we told you about the grade 7 class where the kids we went to visit, and they were giving us presentations about different things. And the one kid was dressed he had a hat, he had a fancy shirt on, and he came up, and his family owns a coffee roasting company. And so he told us all about coffee, and that was fun. And there's this coffee shop that we drive by all the time called Root Coffee, and every day I said, hey, when are we going to go there? Because I like having a fancy coffee once in a while. And Les told us it was good, and it's the place that roasts Impact's coffee. And so finally at the end of the week we got to go, and that guy who was in grade 7 was our server. And so, we got to tell him, hey, you did a great job, and we're praying for you. And just enjoy kind of his life there as part of that too. So, I don't know, it just all is kind of meshed together, and it's cool that we get to be a part of it from here. Yeah. Who's after me? Tell them about my backpack. Another thing they're doing is they have this business where guys are making leather shoes and backpacks and things, and I could tell you all more about that, because look at this beautiful backpack that was handmade by those guys. They need somebody to put together a shop in Canada to help, sell it here, by the way.
Okay. My name is Kason. One of the things that Impact usually does for mission groups is to have a cultural dinner or evening. The idea of this dinner is to experience some of the Guatemalan foods and culture. Our dinner was hosted by Walter and Ruth, and when we arrived, they immediately greeted us, their entire family, and their dogs, which are really cute. And they immediately took us to their backyard, which is really beautiful, big garden, and I think a volleyball net. And they told us that their staple food is tortillas. They eat it with everything, and we got to make tortillas, which is a lot harder than it sounds. It was hard. No. We sampled some salsas. I think the image up there actually has the salsas. And they were in varying degrees of spiciness, and I avoided those generally. There was a hot rice-based beverage, flavored cinnamon, vanilla. It tasted really good, and that was probably my favorite part of the meal. The main part of the dinner, though, was pork, beans, and some more tortillas. For dessert, we had chocolate-covered bananas. I don't enjoy bananas, but if you go through the camera roll of a few people's phones, you'll get a good idea of how much some of the other people enjoyed it. I am generally pretty picky about food, so the different tastes I experienced at not only the cultural dinner, but at sponsor homes too, has really forced me to open up to these foods. Walter and Ruth were great hosts, and the food was amazing. Yeah.
Alrighty. I'm Josiah. Hello. And I'm going to be sharing about the Moquan visit that we did. If you have a keen eye for detail, you may know that when I went down and I taught English there for 3 months through the Vita Discipleship Program, I was stationed at the school Moquan. And returning to that school was really, really, really special. Seeing all of my students again was incredible. I've missed them a bunch, and I've kept in touch with some of the teachers that are there, and they give me little updates on things that are happening, and so it's nice to see kind of how far those students have come. And I find that there's a lot of times where you do something and you don't necessarily get to see the fruits of your labor or the impact that you had. But going back down there, I got to see, the work that I had done there, and how the kids had continued to learn English. They taught me some of their new phrases and would remind me of things that I had taught them when I was there. So it was really special. We got to do our children's ministry there with the grade 1 and 2 kids, and that was super awesome. And then we got to do a visit to their school and do a morning devotional with them, and that was also incredibly special for me. Just being welcomed back with open arms was incredible and was very emotional. And going down to Guatemala, I was always like, I don't know. I really want to go back, but I can't tell if I want to go back for me or if God wants me back there. And I did a lot of prayer, trying to discern, is this Josiah trying to fill a Josiah need by wanting to go back to Guatemala, or is this God calling me? And being back down there really affirmed me in some of the decisions that I'm looking to make here in the future. So you might be seeing more of me up here if I get my ducks lined up in a row. So Moquan, absolutely amazing. I love it there. And I was really glad that I got to share the love that I had for that place with the team, and get to show my mother why that place means so much to me. Alrighty, that's it.
Okay, hi everyone. Forewarning, I'm a bit nervous, so bear with me. Okay, so a lot of the reason that I went on this trip to Guatemala was because of the children we would meet. Going into this, I had little idea of what to expect, but actually being there and experiencing what we did was something I could never have imagined. I think most people who came to Guatemala, not just this year, but every time, can agree that there was not really any way to explain how this all made you feel. The opportunity we had with these kids did not disappoint. We went to the schools and did our ministry there for 3 days. We were able to connect with the kids through worship, games, and some pretty cool crafts. Some of the crafts we did were decorating aprons that could be used at home, decorating cloth bags, and making necklaces. They also received cards made from Katie's class back home. What was cool about it was that we were able to work with some older students from the secondary school who came to do the VBS program. They led all the worship and taught choreography and Bible stories that we were lucky enough to participate in. For me personally, the games are a great way to connect and have fun, but I was really impacted by the worship we did with the kids. Again, I can't really explain the exact feeling, but the whole time I just felt super overwhelmed by the amount of love their little hearts poured out to everyone and to God. The fact that they were free from all worry and embarrassment as they were worshiping their hearts out was humbling. I've struggled with being that open with my faith my whole life, and seeing these children opened my eyes. On the 4th day, as soon as we arrived, like Sylvia, I think said, all the kids had made a huge line from the front doors all the way through the courtyard. They had flower petals, confetti, streamers, palm fronds, cards for us, banners with our names, beautiful bouquets of flowers, and even 3 paper flower crowns for me, Maddie, and Georgia. My heart was so unbelievably full, and I couldn't imagine how children who have been so many difficult things could also be so willing to love on people they barely knew. There was one little girl who, for the 3 days that we were there, stuck with me the entire time. And on the 4th day, as soon as she saw me, she grabbed onto me and didn't let go. She held me and showed me the power of God's love. I'm so glad I got the opportunity to see how God's moving in Guatemala, in the lives of the children, and in these schools, and in me.
Hello, I'm Evan, and I'm going to be talking about the games we did with the kids at the school. So there was about 3 days where we went to the school and played some games with the kids. Personally, I think it went pretty well. The kids looked like they were having fun the whole time. They were laughing and constantly had great big smiles on their faces. On one or two of the days, it was raining, but the kids didn't mind. We would all just be having fun with them in the rain, and it was just such a good time. We played games like a cup stacking game, zombie tag, blob tag, and there was a water balloon game where we'd be in pairs with like some of the kids, and then we would throw water balloons at each other, but like we have to try catch them, and then if you catch it, you take a step back, see how far you can go before it gets popped or whatever. And then it was just cool to see that they like just love that game so much, and just sometimes they'll throw the water balloon at you on purpose to get you wet, and it just makes them laugh, so I wasn't too bothered about that. Yeah, they just had big smiles on their faces, and I think it was pretty special to see how like we could interact with them even though we didn't really know how to speak Spanish, well, some of us anyway. And to like explain some of the games, Pastor Jeff helped us with the language barrier, and it was quite cool to see how there's always a kid every day we went, like just clinging onto you or being asked to get picked up or spun around. So yeah, that was quite cool. To me, it felt like these kids look up to you in a way, and they tried their best at everything they did, and they were just always full of joy. Yeah, our time with the kids was a huge blessing, and being able to go on this trip with this church was pretty cool.
Katie Corbett couldn't make it tonight, but she sent a video about her topic. So, Reed, if you want to run that.
Hi, Grace Baptist. I am Katie, if I haven't met you yet. I have loved the people of Guatemala since I first went when I was 16. And when I went 2 years ago, I came back so excited to share about my experiences and the people that I met with my staff and my students here at Canyon Heights where I work. And since then, we've been fundraising and sending money down. in June, when I realized I'd be able to go down to Guatemala this year, my class and our buddy class made cards. They were so excited when they were making the cards, finding little Spanish phrases and asking all sorts of questions about who these Guatemalan children were. Then, when we had the opportunity to do the children's ministry and I had the chance to give these cards out, the joy on the Guatemalans was so special. The kids were comparing their notes, they were seeing who had what stickers on them, they were so excited. And then I got to bring those stories back. And here at Canyon Heights, the kids were patting each other on their backs. They're saying, hey, look, you did that. You made that card. And it was so special to combine my worlds between Guatemala and here at Canyon Heights. And those experiences were really special, and there's something I get to take away. And I'm so excited still to share, see what's going to come in the adventures between Canyon Heights and Guatemala. So thank you very much. Bye. Hi.
One of the things that Katie doesn't mention is that she works in a public school, and the fundraising that they've been able to do through their weekly popsicle sales has been able to go down, and it's been earmarked for the clinic. And I believe the story was that they were able to do an extra round of vitamins for the kids this year because of the money that was sent down. It was enough. So, yeah, she's excited to be able to do that as long as they are willing to send it. So.
Hi, I'm Beth. This trip was super special for me because I got to go with Kason, which was exciting. But yeah, one of the things we get to do is we get to do a lot of learning about Guatemalan culture, a little bit of history. I feel like we just get a little bit of it. But yeah, it was neat to get a picture of that. So one of the ways we did that, we went to a church called Shishim. And one of the things we learned, I don't know if anybody's sharing about the sinkhole specifically, but we learn for Guatemalans that high places and low places are important places of connection and spirituality, like a place where worship would happen or spiritual things would take place, because those places are special. And so Shishim is one of those places. It's high on a hill, kind of overlooking all of Tektique. And so when we went, kind of when you walk up, before you even go into the church, there's this area where there's a cross, and then in front of the cross, there are all these like little tiny kind of pits or holes dug, and it's actually where witch doctors perform rites there. Is that what you would call it? I don't know. Thanks, Les. And so we got to see that, and then you turn around and you go into the church, and in the church there's lines. Well, I guess it's not usually as busy as it was when we were there, but we were there at a time when a lot of visitors were coming, so there were lines of people, and they were lining up to touch a statue of Jesus and, to make their prayers. And, and it was really interesting to see both of those things happening. And Les was sharing that it's not uncommon for a family to pay for a witch doctor to perform those practices outside and then to come into the church and pray for a blessing from this statue of Jesus, but they don't even necessarily use the name Jesus. They call it the Lord of Shishim, which is the Mayan corn god. And it was just this interesting mix of religion and culture. And yeah, I think going and doing that with the idea that a lot of these families where Teresa was talking about transformation, like these are the practices that they're kind of coming out of. There's like this mix of Catholicism and Mayan religion and spirituality and just all of this. So yeah, then after we kind of had a history lesson from Les, we went into this back area where people have written sort of plaques when their prayers have been answered and things like this. And Les was just sharing that some people come into that space and they're like, we need to pray that God will just tear this place down because it's a place of deceit and it's a place of evil and darkness, and this is what we need to pray for. But he challenged us and encouraged us to just stand in a circle and quietly not quietly, but not aggressively, I guess, to just voice truth about who God is. And so we just spent time as a team just saying, God is this, God is, a conqueror, God is a comforter, God is a healer, and just proclaiming truth, which I thought was, it's a really powerful thing to do instead of, often our gut is, I know what'll fix this, we just need this place to be gone. And I think that's normal to come in and feel like this is what needs to happen. But no, what needs to happen is God needs to just do his thing, and we don't always know what that looks like. But that was our way of kind of, all right, here's what we do know. And that was Shishim.
Okay. When Jackie asked us what we all wanted to speak on, I was like, whew, there's so many things we could talk about, because I feel like Impact Ministries is run so well. And then I thought, why don't I talk about Les and Rita? Because through faith, God has just done miraculous things. And then I found out they're going to be here, and I'm like, oh no. Made me nervous. They just have incredible faith, very simple, obedient faith. And God has used that to multiply the ministry down there immensely. I just want to read a little quote from the book that Rita has written. And her words are, "The Lord calls us to trust him. He asked us to put our hands into his and allow him to lead. We do not follow blindly, because we know that the one who leads us is trustworthy. We know his heart is pure, his thoughts are good, and his purposes are high. We know that he is powerful and even able to perform any miracle we may need. He is able to protect us, provide for us, and win victories on our behalf." And this book is about 15 years of memoirs of the start of the ministry down there. If you ever get a chance to get a copy, it changed my heart and changed the heart of my son, Eli. When we first went down in 2018, he was quite sick, and I just sat by his bedside and read some of the stories out of here, and he became quite the little prayer warrior. So they went down to Guatemala several times with different teams. They lived here in BC, and God just kept putting on their hearts to take different teams down year after year after year. And God slowly started working and saying, hey, I would like you to come down here more permanently. And in Rita's book, she talks about the mud. There's so much mud everywhere. She's like, had this thought, oh God, I'm so thankful I don't have to live in all this mud. And I think it was maybe like 5 months later, they were moving down there. They packed up their 3 kids they had at the time. They'd had raised 3 kids, 2. Pardon? Okay, stand up. They raised 2 of their own children, and then God put it on their heart to raise 3 more children from Haiti. And then another little sweetheart named Tim landed on a doorstep one night, and there's a little note that said, could you please ask Les and Rita to raise me? I'm not quite sure how the note was written, but that was the basics of it. And they quickly wrestled with that, like, really, God? We've already raised 2 sets of children. But Tim has been a complete blessing to them. So they've raised 3 Waves of children. It's quite amazing. But in this story, they packed up their 3 children from Haiti and drove thousands of miles down to Guatemala through Mexico, which they felt quite nervous about, but God just kept clearing the pathway for them. And they got down there, and it was on their hearts eventually to start a school down there. And God just put this neat partnership together. They met this woman that had this 4-room Adobe brick schoolhouse, and she was trying to run a school out of there. And it became evident that it needed some more help and to be sustainable. And then I believe God just put it on her heart to turn to Les and Rita and take the baton. And they've gone from that 1 school to now 11, as Sylvia was talking about, with 1,900 children. And as you've heard in the stories up here of how God is changing the hearts of the children, and then the mother, and then the father, the whole families and communities, it's just an amazing thing to be a part of. And it's because of their simple and obedient faith.
Good evening. My name is Gary Moore, for those who don't know me. And on this trip, I wasn't the oldest on the trip. Right, Sylvia? Yeah, we had such an amazing trip. We had a group of people that were just absolutely amazing. And one of the best things for me was, for the first time in 9 trips on different mission trips, I had 3 grandchildren with me. You talk about a legacy. My little title here is called Legacy and Spreading the Joy and the Vision of Impact to Another Generation. It took a while, but eventually we got 3 of my grandchildren to come. And the legacy down there, we were in this care home for the children. You've already heard about it. And Pastor Jeff was there, and all these kids were running around, and these 2 ladies who are the managers of this place, Jeff is looking at them, and I think I recognize that one girl. So he walks up to her and he talks to her, says, "Is your name so-and-so?" And she said, "Yes." "Do you have a sister named so-and-so?" And she said, "Yes." And Jeff said to them, said to this lady, "My wife and myself, you 2 people, sponsored these children when they were little for 8 or 9 years. They went through the school system, went on for further education, got their degrees in child care, and now they're back at Impact Ministries working." I think that's a legacy that is just unbelievable. When you go on a trip like this with 17 people, and 6 of them are 21 years and younger, and you have 2 adult males, and and so a lot of times Jeff and I are in 2 different vans, so we're left with all these women. I see some ladies are blushing. I heard from pregnancies, and should I put more salt in the meals, or changing diapers, and it was kind of interesting, all right. I had permission from my granddaughter Maddie to share one of her stories. After each day out in the city doing things, we'd have a debriefing. And I really always enjoyed those, because each person got to share what they were impacted with that day. And that day, we'd gone to a place called the Sinkhole of Chicori. And it's a hole in the ground that's probably as big or bigger than this church. And to get down to it, it's a long hike down. Switchbacks, back and forth. And when you finally get down to the bottom, it's really muddy. You really got to watch your step. And our host, Hugo, the fellow who drove us around, he explained to us once we got down in there what this place is all about. And it's where the native Guatemalans, the witchcraft people, they would go down there and offer sacrifices in Chicoy to the corn god, the water god, all these different gods. And so after he explained all this, he asked us to separate. And there's 15 or 16 of us down, and 15 of us down there. So we all went off into little areas, and it was dark. And he told us to pray. God, what do you want me to do? Show me something. Help me to discern your will. And so my granddaughter, Maddie, she's praying this. And she says, God, do you want me to be baptized? You know, if you want me to be baptized, show me a sign. Well, the people before us who had done the witchcraft thing earlier in the morning, there's still fire pits with embers burning, different places around. And as she said that, to show me a sign, this one ember lit right up. And that was her sign from God to be baptized. I think that is so neat that here we are down in this deep hole where pagan stuff is happening. God is still there. He is there. And I think I'll wrap it up with that. Thank you.
Taught me to go long way from home, someplace where I'm not comfortable. Out on the water, I close my eyes and cast a line to the unknown. But I've broken more than just a window, no foundation on my floor. I'm shook to my core. I felt a feeling, wondering if there's something more. But I lost my path to an early grave. Then I took 3 steps and I lost my way. No, I don't wanna believe it now, I couldn't save myself. I took my preconceptions and I left them on the shelf. Because they said that I need Jesus or I'll end up down in hell. But I just can't believe it till I sing it for myself. And I'll say, hallelujah, I've come so far from open arms. Hallelujah, still I've grown so far from where it started. Now looking back, rose colored glass, I wanna see your silver lightning. Ghosts from my past don't make it easy, but believe me, I'm still trying. No, I don't wanna believe it now, I couldn't save myself. I took my preconceptions and I left them on the shelf. Because they said that I need Jesus or I'll end up down in hell. But I just can't believe it till I sing it for myself. And I'll say, hallelujah, I've come so far from open arms. But hallelujah, still I've grown so far from where it started. 'Cause you lost this morning, I came too late. Lost my dad, should not be great. Then I took 3 steps and I lost my way. No, I don't want to believe it now. I couldn't save myself. I took my preconceptions and I left them on the shelf. Because they said that I need Jesus, or I'll end up down in hell. But I just can't believe it till I sing it for myself. And I say, hallelujah, I've come so far from open arms. But hallelujah, so I've grown so far from where it started. Adios. Hasta mañana.
Josiah put that together. Thank you, Josiah, for doing that. It's kind of fun. Now it's the time for the 45-minute sermon. Just kidding. The team did feel bad. They traveled like how many thousand miles, and they still had to listen to me preach. I don't know if that was fair or not. I just want to close tonight talking about one thing, and it's the relationship between our church and what Impact is doing in Guatemala. We went the first time. I didn't go. Angela and Lisa Friesen led a team in 2002. So that was 22, almost 23 years ago. And then we went again in 2003. I don't know, I think we've gone 6, maybe 8 times. And you look at, I'm kind of cynical about short-term mission trips because they often are kind of glorified Christian tourism where people go down and feel really good about what they've done and leave a mess behind them and buy a bunch of sombreros and come home. And so the reason that I love working with what Impact is doing is because it's not that. It's about building relationships. And that picture, there's a picture read, this is Casilda, who Angela and I sponsored, and now she's a nanny at the children's home. We started sponsoring her like 17 years ago. And to meet her there and to see that, and there's people that we've known, our church has known over this 23 years. Some of you've met Eduardo and Evelyn and Carlos and Edgar and all these guys. You've met these people, and there's a relationship there. And when we go down there, it's not like we're going in to be the great white hope for the Guatemalan people. That's not it at all. And I think you've heard that in the stories. We get way more, I feel like, than we actually give. But what we do is we walk in relationship with the church in Guatemala, and we let them know that there's people in Canada that love them and that are praying for them and want to walk alongside them. And they love to see us come, and we have friendships there. Like when I saw Hector, the pastor, who we've known since 2003. I've known him since 2003, and now he's the pastor of the main church. And I love the guy. And it's missions done right. Because you sit back and you think, look, every person here, let's just talk Turkey. Every person here, out of their own pocket, somehow finds $1,250 to go. And then we raise around 800 or 900, maybe 1,000 more per person as a team. So you're looking at more than $30,000. So the question is, from a business standpoint, wouldn't it be better if we just wrote a check for $30,000 and sent it to Guatemala and let them do things? And in some ways, yeah, I'm sure they could do a lot of things with that money. But I tell you, taking a team down there and what it does for us and what it does for the people that we interact with is really something that you cannot put a price on. And when we were in the sinkhole, which is one of my least favorite things to do, the older I get, the more I slide, and I just know I'm going to bite it in front of the whole church, and it's just going to be, that's going to be the slideshow. It's me going boom, 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 all the way down the hill. But I was sitting there, and we were asking, praying, and I just watched this little drip keep coming down, and you can see how these, is it stalagmites? It's the G. Stalagmites that grow up out of the ground, I don't know, 2 millimeters a year, but there's one in there that's like 27 feet high. And you just think, that's a lot of dripping. And God just said to me, and I said this today at our church business meeting, Impact has done amazing things. The first time we went, there may be 50 or 60 kids in one school, and now, 1,900, I think it's closer to 2,000 now, in 11 schools and coffee plantation and farming and 3 churches planted and home groups happening. It's huge now, the stuff that's happened. But you know what? That's not what draws me. What draws me is the fact that 25 years ago, Lesson Reader went down just faithfully doing one thing at a time, just a drip. And we started kind of partnering. We throw our little drips in there when we go, and we pray for them, and we send some money down, and we get to know these people drip. And over time, God does amazing things. And that's why we keep going. And I said to our church today, too, the same thing is true just of here. Carrie's kind of driving that home. It's not the big, we think these big life-changing things, and we look at Impact and we're like, look at this huge organization and all that. It's faithfulness one day at a time, letting the Spirit of God lead you and taking a step. And we have such good relationships with Impact. I'm the pastor, not the leader. The elders lead, and I guess they have the ultimate decision, and they can say no. But we want to keep going because there's relationships there. They're not looking for us to come and save them and give them something that they're praying for us. I'll tell you this one last story. We have every year we have a gathering with the teachers from the school we did the kids ministry in. We usually play soccer with them, and this year, thanks to Evan and Kaysen, we were competitive. Well, I think we had 8 more players, and 5 of them were Guatemalan, but we still were competitive, and Evan and Kaysen were very impressive. But then later on, we have a meal with them, and they kind of share their testimonies and their stories. And one of the guys that got up that spoke is Julio, who you don't know this, but maybe you do. He's been at our church. Julio, his wife is Julie. She's originally from Alberta. And he got up at the end, and he just said, this is what he's saying to all these teachers of the school that we're having dinner with. He said, I've been in this church. I've been here. I've been to Hope. He's a big Rambo fan. He loves it. It's just a strange thing. But he said, I've been to Hope. And you know what? I went to the church, and you know what they had up on the wall right over there? Guatemala. And they were praying for us. And I just thought, that's why we go. They're praying for Grace Baptist Church and Hope. We are not alone in this. And we just want to say they are not alone either. We want to walk together. And everybody here will tell you how much their life has changed by seeing the church from a different angle down there. So that's why we keep doing it. So thank you, Lesson Reader, for going all those times ago and living in the mud. And sorry we embarrassed you tonight by bringing you here. This is great because they're in Abbotsford now, part-time. So we get to see them a lot more, which is great. But we will keep going. And I'd love for any of you, let me just see this. How many of you have been there? Raise your hand. Look at that. Yeah. So it's fun and exhausting and life-changing. But the coolest thing about it is you'll get to see what God does by little things one day at a time over the long haul. So let's just pray and we'll close. Thanks for coming. God, we lift up to you the work of Impact. We are so thankful that we had a chance to partner with them. We are so thankful for the things that all this team has learned and brought back and the ways that we are different people. We just pray that impact will continue down there as well. And God, above all, help us to just seek to be faithful day by day. Help us to stop looking for the big, transformative, change the whole world moment, and let us just follow you tonight and then tomorrow when we get up and the next day, and let us look back in 25 or 30 years amazed at what you can do with faithfulness. We commit this to you in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for coming.